right? So maybe I start off with disruption as a whole or in general, right? Disruption just means what? That is filled with ambiguity. You don't know what to expect, right? It's in a way you are like walking blindfolded. Bombs could explode in anywhere, and using an analogy, right? So how project management plays into this, right? It's I shall use the analogy of, let's say we are now in Taman Tun, right? We want to go to KLCC, right? But because of the disruptive environment, we don't know, okay, how many kilometers to KLCC, what roads to use, do I need to transit to LRT station or what, right? So project management in a disruptive environment means that we manage it step by step, phase by phase, right? You have an end outcome or as a North Star to guide you. So you know your destination is KLCC as an example, right? So let's just start on something. We have a broad plan. So get your engines warmed up, and then we start the journey. Along the way, depending what our disruptions happen, we need to be a bit agile, we need to be adaptive, right? We need to have proper risk management, right? So at the start, we just think of all the possible risks that could occur, right? And then we shall mitigate it both before it happens or even when it happens, right? So yeah, in a nutshell, project management in a disruptive environment, it basically means you can't plan 100%, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't plan. We should still plan because it acts as a North Star, as a guiding principle, right? And then from there we adapt it according to the times and the needs. I think to start with is to be assertive, right? So alluding to the point of saying no, right? In projects, you're faced with so many expectations from different stakeholders, right? As a project manager, your job is not to pick sides. Your job is to make sure the project is delivered, the outcomes are achieved, right? So one of the core skills, right, or prerequisite rather, is that assertiveness. And I think to supplement that is the value of principle, right? So we base on facts, we base on evidence, right? Not because he said should be like this, she said should be like this. No. We go by fact-based, evidence-based.
I'll approach the mindset from two contexts here. One is the project manager and his team. First and foremost, the project manager must be crystal clear what is the objective. Who are the stakeholder? Because projects come with a very specific goals. No? And I'm sure many of you know the three major dimensions. You want to deliver on time, you want to deliver at cost, and you want to deliver what you're supposed to deliver according to the scope. And it's always a kind of juggling, because if it's delayed by a couple of months, project's rate is always the man-hour plus the material cost. Man-hour may be doubled, and it will eat away your profit. So there's always a trade-off, there's always a challenge. So a project manager's mindset is, you see, if you're a subcontractor, when the project is delayed, that is profit for him. Am I right? If you are paid by a daily rate, let's say you are running a project, the project is supposed to finish in a month, but it's going second month. That guy has more, because a lot of workers are daily paid workers. So as a project manager, your responsibility will be managing all this. We call that the triple constraint, even though there could be more than three categories of constraint. So that is project manager's role. The project team member's role is ability to understand how one person's failure or delay will cost another person. So the project team members must have a crystal clear idea. They are like a relay team. If you remember 4x1, just example, yeah? If the first person is responsible for identify procurement, identify qualified suppliers, if he made mistake in selecting of the right vendor, the guy who is going to do the operation is going to struggle. Because maybe the quality is not up to the marks, maybe the the delivery is not up to the mark. And for example, an accountant, if they are in the project, they will be driven by cost reduction. They may not be visible or may not be aware the consequences of getting cheap product. They may be driven by cost, but they may not be aware, let's say company A, they are very cheap, but no reliability. So a good project team members must know how they are interdependent and what it means by total cost. The cheap does not mean cheap. So that is two dimension of mindset, yeah. The project manager must be crystal clear what are the stakeholders' requirement, and they must be aware that sometimes there could be a conflicting requirements. Your delay is my profit. So he must manage that. Project team members must be trained. I know some organization before they do project management, they do team building for projects. So during the team building, they will be aware of integration, they will be aware of interrelations. So during project meeting, instead of Mr. David, I'll say, hey bro, what's up? The kind of connectivity, I know organizations sent to my place in Lumot, place Outward Bound School, which is very famous for team building. I'm from Lumot, Perak. No? So the project team members must be crystal clear on the interdependency. These are the two factors I would think the mindset.
I think I shall start on that because I've also been a business consultant and a project manager, right? So essentially business consultants, they come in is to identify or diagnose a specific problem, right? So maybe your company is having revenue loss, cost leakages and so on, right? So they'll do a analysis, they will interview the key management people and all, and then form what's the problem hypothesis, right? What could potentially go wrong? And once that is formed, they will come up with a list of recommendations. So typically the business consultant's role stops there, right? I've recommended what should be done in order to solve problem XYZ, right? Project manager comes in is to ensure the execution of those recommendations, right? So they'll typically come in, right? First ensure there's a viable business case, right? And then form a project team, have the governance structure in place, right? Identify a project owner or project sponsor, right? And then ensure that the project or the activities gets executed in a timely manner, and ultimately the whatever goals or objectives, right, is actually achieved.
Recently, I shared an article with the CMI community titled Accidental Project Manager. I was sharing my own experience. See, I served in the Royal Malaysian Navy as an instructional system designer. So my job is to design training. So when we got a shipbuilding project, the new generation petrol vessel in late 90s, 1998, 99 actually, one of the contract requirement is specialists in something called Royal Malaysian Navy Training System, RMNTS. So I'm one of the certified RMNTS practitioner. So they appointed me as a training project manager. And I thought I'm an expert. I went in. Second week or third week, they throw a contract document, about 1,000 pages, with a lot of detail on contracts, finance, requirement with the original equipment manufacturers. I was clueless. Though my job title is a project manager, I know my job, but I was not aware of the cost implication, schedule implication, contract terminologies, international law related to procurements, international law related to bringing ammunition from one country to another. It is so complex. So the message I'm trying to tell is, just because we are a subject matter expert, for example, you could be the best IT engineer in the world. Being an IT engineer and managing an IT project is two different skill sets. And many people go into the next level, because from an engineer to become, to grow in your career, you need a management title. So they go into project managers, and that's where they fail. I had a privilege of working in Germany for a while in Hamburg. I got a shock when I saw engineer will be still being engineer's job at the workshop, doing engineering related job without necktie, without coat, and he will be paid salary equivalent to a general manager, because they are individual contributors. So my suggestion is to all of us, if we want to grow into a project manager or management role, be aware of our competency gap. Don't wait for HR to equip us. HR will be too busy and many other things. One last thing, if I may suggest or I may share, how many of you know Diego Maradona? Not really. The young people will say, I know Lionel Messi. Who is Maradona? Remember? If you are not in the 80s or 90s, you may not know Maradona, yeah? Those who are who raise your hand, that means you know, in the 80s, he is the hand of God. In Argentina, is God himself, right? I mean, Maradona passed away recently, yeah, some time ago. He's a legendary football player. No one can deny that. But what happened when he became Argentina's football coach and manager? Miserably failed. He was in one of the Middle East countries as a manager, miserably failed. As a person, he was overweight. He was not a role model for healthy living. Being a legendary football player, he was not a role model for healthy living. Yet, I'm his big fan as a football player. So my humble suggestion is, anyone wants to take up project management role, be aware your subject matter expert alone is not sufficient. So I had the first-hand experience having lawyers with me and explaining, for example, the difference between shall and will, for example. For a layman like me, it's just a grammar. But when they go for arbitration, all these terminologies matters. What is the main contract? What is the attachment? Which is the level of documentation if there's a conflict? This kind of technical knowledge, we must have the humility to know that we don't know. You could be a 50-year-old man with a 30 years project management experience. A graduate in law who graduated yesterday can be your mentor in terms of defining. So that's something that I learned the hard way sometimes. Be aware that being an expert in your domain, technical domain, is not sufficient to manage project.
So what are your key takeaways from today's events?
Oh, that's a really good question, Sam. So a couple of things are playing out. One is the ability to be very clearly focused on what project management is all about. The other one is to have an overarching viewpoint, to take all the different facets that are required in a project. But more importantly, also to be appreciative of the stakeholders and how the stakeholders are now looking at all of this. So I thoroughly enjoyed. I enjoyed the session, fantastic speakers. I like the sharing. I enjoyed it.
So I think today's event is pretty good. It's a wonderful chance for us to network with members as well. And at the same time, hearing from the speakers on things regarding project management, the best practices that are in the industry, what is the essential skills that are needed for project managers today in today's disruptive environment. So I think a lot of insights were shared, some very practical points from the two panelists, Tarminder Singh, of course, from Air Asia, providing his thoughts on what is important in that sector, and also Dr. Prabha, who is our newly co-opted board member as well, sharing some really good insights on some of the key points or key lessons
from projects in the past that he has worked on.
So I think today we actually learned quite a lot about project management. I think it's very, very important that project management is part of any chartered managers or any aspiring managers' portfolio. They actually have a very good understanding of what it takes. I think we learned this very, very firmly in the Malaysian context, and I think today's speakers and moderator were very, very good in that regard. I think they covered a number of different points, a number of different issues, and I think that, quite frankly, I think that some of our members of the CMI actually learned quite a lot today.
I would like to express my thankful to the CMI for this very wonderful event. Actually, it was a very useful event with the very good panels. We get a lot of informations and many of advice to be from the best project management and how can we manage our projects to successful, especially in this very difficult environment.
I had a really good time to interact with everybody, and I'm looking forward to having more of these kind of events where we can see members and engage more with the CMI community here in Malaysia. So looking forward to that, and hope to see you there as well.